The Casie Center is a special place for children and families in our community. As a child advocacy center, the Casie Center is designed to make the investigations of child abuse as easy as possible on children. Perhaps the best way to experience the Casie Center is to hear about it through someone who was here firsthand. Many years ago, Julie Reed was in a situation that brought her to the Casie Center, and she's here today to talk about what was going on in her life at that time.
At the time that we became involved, and I say we because I had a younger brother, we became involved at the Casie Center because we had a whole plethora of things happening at home with my mom's then husband that made it to where we were not safe in our home. I finally disclosed a small portion of what was going on with me, and the focus of mine was sexual abuse. And I had never talked to anybody about that before. It had always been focused on the domestic violence and the physical abuse that was happening, and a lot of emotional abuse that was happening in our home. But I was so ashamed of what I was going through with the sexual abuse. And when I finally gave just like a small glimpse of what was happening, the school, even though it was the summertime, the connections that I had over the summer and who I disclosed to initially allowed for the school to become aware and for them to make a report. And then that same day that I had made the small disclosure, my brother and I were transported to the Casie Center by the DCS worker. I remember coming in and my brother and I sitting in the waiting room together, waiting as things were, because it was an emergency situation. So we were brought in, they were still gathering information at that time. And we were offered a snack. I still vividly to this day remember exactly what drink and food I had. I had animal crackers and I had apple juice. And my brother and I just sat and we played this little like handheld game together because we're both teenagers, and so all the younger kid toys in the room, that just wasn't something that spoke to us, but they had options for my brother and I had a coloring book that I colored in as well while I was waiting, which helped just kind of settle in. And even though my brain is racing with what's going to happen next, it definitely helped calm that process.
I would say that our staff is amazingly good at getting children to open up. And part of it is just we try to just really relate to them right where they are. We talk about things they like to do first. We talk about if they like to draw or dance, or they like to play sports, or they're good at math at school. So we talk to them and get them talking to us about lots of positive things before then we may move into some things that might be a concern.
I don't remember if I was interviewed first or if my brother was, but I remember being very even more nervous about the fact that we were going to be interviewed separately because I was his caretaker. And I don't remember who went first. I just remember at one point I was sitting in the waiting room by myself. But my interview, I went back with you, and I just remember feeling so listened to and so heard. And it was the first environment that I had been in where I was talking to somebody about what was happening in my home, even just getting some of the baseline details, where it wasn't that automatic, like, oh, poor you, that must be so horrible for you. I was just being listened to, and with genuine, I just knew I was being heard.
I got involved as a volunteer at first and just became passionate about the work, but I could see that it was working. I could see that when in the right environment with the right people and the right teamwork, that children could disclose oftentimes some pretty terrible things. But once they share that with us and see that we can hear it, they're not judged and we're not shocked by it. We just accept whatever they say, and then we move on and see what we can do to make their lives better.
That was the first time that I had told the entire story, told everything that was going on. So even past the little snippet that I had given in a disclosure prior to coming to the Casie Center, that was the first time that I just put it all out there. And it kind of got to a point where I don't know what I have to lose. And it just felt like this was the right place to do that. And being able to settle in that all of the people in our court, from the time that we were at the Casie Center forward, our caseworker, law enforcement that was involved, we had a CASA that was involved, that everybody had our best interest in mind. And talking with you and feeling empowered that it was not just my time to protect everybody else, but my chance to be protected too. I got this bag, my brother got one too, that it was just a simple canvas bag, and it had toiletries and a coloring book and some markers, something as simple as deodorant, because when we left, when DCS and law enforcement came to our house, we literally left with the clothes on our back and the shoes on our feet, and that was it. We weren't allowed to go back. We weren't able to go back home, and so that was the first thing. You know, I said there was the before and there was the after. That was my first possession that I had after in my kind of new life. And it meant so much that I kept that bag. I kept it. I still have it, even now.
Tell me how it felt to see your relatives after the interview.
Once I saw that my aunt and uncle arrived, and then that my grandparents arrived right afterwards, that being reunited with them was emotional in itself, but realizing that things were changing. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I knew in that moment, we're safe. That was the day that shifted. It's like I had a life before and then I had a life after, and that was what started the life after.
Did you or your brother ever have an opportunity for some counseling?
We did get counseling. For a while, it was a part of our care process afterwards and a part of the court process. And then we both continued that. I ended up graduating high school and moving into college, and still continued that through college.
How's your brother doing?
He's very healthy and very happy. Our paths after and how open we were to counseling looked different. But we've ended up, both of us are, as healthy and happy as you can be as adults. So counseling helped tremendously, just being able to walk through everything and realizing that I wasn't alone, that a lot of the things that I had experienced, and I studied social work in college, that was a big healing process for me too, because textbook, I learned that what we went through was not a common experience for a lot of people, but the way it happened to us, it wasn't because we were bad people. It wasn't because we were bad kids and deserved what happened to us. It was, we had a bad person in our life that made decisions based on his own thoughts and feelings that had nothing to do with the worth of my brother and I.
Do you have any thoughts about what would have happened had you not had your opportunity to come to the Casie Center or disclose your abuse?
I've thought about this question quite a bit. What would happen if we hadn't have gotten out? At the time, I was already making plans for what that was going to look like. I planned on leaving home literally the day I turned 18 and never looking back. Leaving the state, leaving home, not being a part of my community or my family. And emotionally, and the kind of person I would have been without all of the support that I got, and feeling like I was heard and believed, I can't imagine where I would be as an adult without those supports. Very broken, probably.
Is there anything else that you remember that maybe helped you start with the healing?
I remember sitting in the waiting room and there being this big container of buttons, and that the secretary at the time, or maybe it was an advocate, she told us what the buttons were, that every kid that was interviewed got to put a button, and we ended up putting buttons in the jar. And that was the moment where I realized it's not us. It's not just us. We're not alone.